finished school. I hated school, decided that school wasn't for me, didn't think I'd go to university. So I'd actually signed on the dotted line to be a soldier in the Queen's Army the year after this event had finished. And 24634346 was my army number, and I was a private soldier just after my 18th birthday, and about 2 months later I got my A-level results. So I had to come home on leave to collect my A-level results from school. And I still remember going in the car with my dad and a family friend who I'd managed to persuade to come with me because I was so terrified of what my results were going to be. So the family friend was there to kind of distract my dad from the fear and the concern that I had. So I rocked up to school, they gave me the envelope, opened it, and I thought, they must have mixed it up with somebody else, because I'd actually got enough A-levels to go to university after all. So I still remember the head of sixth form saying, Bartlett, how the hell did you manage to do that? I said, no idea, sir. So, but by then I was already in the army, and so an ordinary boy from an ordinary place, all I thought it was going to be was a professional soldier. Then what happened was the army said, oh, right, well, you got those A-levels, we think you should go to university. Okay, well, I'll join the army not to go to university. So they persuaded me that if I joined the reserves, I could carry on and then come back to the army, get my degree, whatever that was going to be. So it was like, okay, I had a job to kill in the meantime. So I did end up in this place. Anyone know where that is?
Sandhurst.
Yeah, Royal Military Academy. That building there is called Old College. There's another one around the back of those trees called New College, which isn't actually very new, it's quite old. And then there's another one behind those trees called Victory College, which is the one I went to. So in 1986, I was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Corps of Royal Engineers with another army number, because they change your number when you become an officer. And 33 years later, I'm still serving as a reserve officer in the brigade. So it's been an interesting career alongside my normal kind of work career. But in between, I got a job working in the print industry. And I didn't know anything about it, thought it was quite interesting. Started working my way through print. The first proper job was going backwards and forwards to Liverpool Football Club. Anyone a Liverpool fan in the room by any chance? Yeah, there's always one or two, you see. So going backwards and forwards, producing the programme. It was in the era of Bob Paisley. Fantastic time, so that was a really great experience. But I got really interested in marketing. I didn't know anything about marketing, and then I got really interested in advertising. And at the time, well, in fact, when I was a schoolboy, I thought the ads on TV were produced by the TV company. I didn't know there was an industry. That's how rubbish careers advice was back in the 80s. So I didn't know that there was an advertising industry actually producing this stuff. So I got really interested, and there was a guy who worked with, anyone heard of Saatchi & Saatchi? Advertising agency? Yeah? So this guy was known as the third brother. Anyone know his name by any chance?
Saatchi? Gerald?
No. I'll come back to him in a moment. But he was the guy that got me really interested, not only in marketing and advertising, but also in the process of doing acquisitions, because that's what he did for the brothers. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is not theory. This is actually kind of what I've done. So 7 acquisition deals of companies, and I'm currently negotiating on about 3 more. Had a bit of a break while we've been building up the Business Buyers Club. Generated about 10 million in sales through each of those acquisitions, so added them all together, about 10 million in revenue. And by and large, bar one, which was a rescue turnaround, they were all profitable companies. I've worked on about 50 different deals, because the ratio of deals down to completed deals is roughly that sort of figure. And I've had a number of deals fall over on the day of completion as well, so that does happen. Same as property. I've raised capital with venture capitalists, raised about 3.2 million quid to do a startup business. It was originally going to be in Manchester, then spread out across the UK, so that's quite interesting, or vulture capitalists, as some people call them. I've also worked with some pretty amazing deal makers along the way, learnt some best practice. But alongside that, I've also started and grown 7-figure businesses. So I know what it takes to actually start a business from scratch and grow it to reasonable sort of levels of turnover. So I do talk from a position of knowledge and authority and experience as well. So this is the guy that I was talking about. Anyone know who that is?
Guy who runs WPP, is it?
That's the fella. name is Sir Martin Sorrell. But back in the 80s, he was playing old Martin Sorrell. And the story goes, Saatchi & Saatchi was Morris and Charles Saatchi. And one day he said to him, look, I think I've done a lot to kind of help the business grow. How about a piece of the action? Not unreasonable. So they said, okay. Took him outside the agency, walked him across the road, said, what do you see? So he said, well, it's the agency. He said, that's right. He said, what does it say over the door? I said, Saatchi & Saatchi. That's right, it doesn't say Saatchi & Saatchi and Sorrell, so go off back to your desk and get on with your work. So he sort of took his forelock, said, right, oh governor, and went back. What he did next was really interesting, because then he went and raised quite a decent pile of cash, and he bought a controlling stake in a small, obscure listed company called Wire Plastics and Products, which today is WPP. He used the cash then to acquire controlling interest, then did a rights issue, got a ton of cash, and went and bought advertising agencies, but not just any advertising agencies. He went and bought, first of all, J. Walter Thompson, which at the time was an ad agency on either side of the Atlantic and had held the Ford advertising account for 40 years. Then he bought Ogilvy and Mather. Anyone heard of Ogilvy and Mather? A guy called David Ogilvy, one of the best copywriters of the 20th century. He wrote the line, at 30 miles an hour, the loudest sound is the ticking of the clock, which was an ad line that he wrote for Rolls-Royce. But David Ogilvy started life as a door-to-door Arga salesman. So I always have a vision of him walking around with an Arga on his back saying, "Want to buy an Arga?" He's an amazing guy as well. And today, WPP is the biggest global advertising group in the world. And this guy earns 70 million a year just in salary, and still owns most of the business as well on top of that. If you want to know anything about growth through acquisition and extraordinary sort of business ethics and how to build a massive business, do some research on this guy, because he's pretty awesome. And if you see him on the media, pay attention to what he says, because he knows what he's talking about. He's quite famous once for sitting down at the Wimbledon lawn tennis finals and spending most of the match on his BlackBerry doing deals. That's not that everyone's taste, but interesting guy nonetheless. So 1996, I got headhunted to come and join a guy and build up a business from scratch, one of the businesses I talked about. And in a room probably about an eighth of the size of this room, we started off. And after 6 years, this was the client base that we had. So I ran the JD Sports Gold Card, the customer loyalty program. We built databases for people like Eidos Interactive. We ran the Lara Croft fan club at one stage. She's not real. Some people genuinely think she is. I had some very interesting letters coming in about Lara, but Yates's Wine Lodges, it was great doing the market research for Yates's. We did the mail order platform for ice and frozen foods, and Taste for Wine for Sainsbury's became quite a big account for us. We were doing all of their mail order wine business, and then basically I was coming back on the train one day, and I'd wanted to grow the business, not just purely through slogging away and building up organically. It took me about 6 years to get revenue up to 1.5 million, which put us in the top 10 in the Northwest. So we were, doing pretty well. Good client base. I was by then a fellow of the Institute of Direct Marketing. Used to teach at Manchester Met University, set exam questions, etc., etc. And coming back from London, just been offered another £1 million contract from Sainsbury's for another part of the business. So I got back and I said to my then partner, I said, look, you're pushing 70. I've been slogging away building this business up. The plan was one day my son, so how about it? To be told, well, I'm in negotiation to sell the shares to somebody else. So, anyone remember the ice bucket challenge? A couple of years ago, yeah? That was the equivalent of a mental ice bucket challenge, yeah? Sat there and hearing that. And I'd already had the conversation about, why don't we grow by acquiring our supply chain? So we spent a lot of money with mailing houses and printers and all that sort of stuff, and we could expand the business and end up with a cross referral of different customer types, so our customers, their customers, etc. Now I'm not really interested in that, and then it became apparent. So in a highly emotional state, I went, right, okay, I'm off, and I just walked out. So I'd recruited the clients, the staff, the system, and I said, I'm off. And I backed myself to go and do something different. It all kind of went fairly unpleasant after that, but that's a whole different chapter in the book. So download the book and you can find out what happened next. But what happened next to me was I went off and started to, I thought, go and buy some companies, but inevitably people went, oh, you're now available. I've got this business idea, I've got this business idea. So I ended up getting dragged into various businesses that I hadn't foreseen, but it was really interesting until this happened, and I fractured my spine. Now, I know what you're thinking. He's a military bloke, he must have been parachuting, he must have been jumping out of planes, he must have been skiing. Sadly, it was nothing like that. My loft ladder broke when I came down it one day. And the T12 of my back looked a bit like that sort of bone structure there. So I woke up in hospital, staring at the ceiling, much the same as this one. And I go, don't remember this. Where am I? What's occurring? Because to this day I have no recollection of the injury at all, or the accident. So I had 3 to 4 weeks in hospital while the bone healed. So luckily, touch wood, I was quite fortunate because it didn't impact on my spinal cord. Although apparently when I was knocked out, I got up, wandered around for a bit and then collapsed again. I don't remember that. If I'd done any more of that, I probably would have been in a wheelchair. So I was pretty lucky really from that point of view. So while I was in hospital, I was kind of like, okay, what's the universe telling me? And the conclusion was that I really should go out and grow by acquiring companies. So I had another 3 months in a body brace. My daughter was 5 weeks old at the time. She wouldn't come near me as a little baby because I looked like a Starship Trooper. Couldn't sleep, couldn't drive, so not ideal really. So I came into 2005 thinking, right, okay, I'm going to do this. And we set up, me and the other guys set up a business, one to go and raise the VC money, the other one to go and find companies. And we made lots of mistakes. We had a lot of fun. We made offers on all kinds of companies, didn't really know what we were doing. Remember one time, got a phone call from a guy, we made an offer, and it was like this hair blower sound coming down the phone. And when he finished ranting at me at the outrageous offer made on his company, he was like, "So an offer?" And then another one, true story, trying to buy a small CCTV company, and there were 2 owners of the business. We only ever met one for some reason, so we got to a point where, look, we need to meet the other guy as well. Yeah, okay, all right, I'll organise it. So we sat in reception in the serviced offices that they had, and a transvestite walked in, and it turned out to be the other partner. Now, I have nothing against transvestites whatsoever, but this was the bloke that went out and did the installations. I have no idea whether he went out dressed like a woman doing the installations for CCTV, but it was an entertaining part of the process. So, yeah, good fun going out and looking at stuff like that. So we got to the end of that year, and suddenly we had VCs going, yeah, okay, here's 3.2 million, and 2 companies going, yeah, okay, we'll sell to you. Like, okay, what do we do now? So the deal was that my partner went off and did the VC thing, and I went off and did the acquisitions, basically. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, just want to pose some questions. Anyone know what the biggest acquisition deals of all time might have been? Anyone hazard a guess?
Something to do with Time Warner, isn't it?
Well done. Time Warner's up there, but not quite the biggest. Anyone, anything similar to that? Okay, I thought you had misery. $180 billion. Not that long ago. 2000. Pretty big stuff. Time Warner, there you go, AOL. But it only lasted 9 years, so I hope they got their money back. Don't know if they did. 164 billion. More recently, Verizon acquired 2.5% of Vodafone for a mere 130 billion in 2013. So, don't worry, I'm not going to be talking about £1 billion deals. That's not kind of the level that we're at, really. So, so I pose a question. Anyone care to suggest commonalities of the businesses that you see on the screen in front of you? Anything that strikes you as common to those, or specific to them, or makes them stand out, apart from obviously their value?
Online.
They're online, yep.
They weren't around very long ago.
They weren't around very long ago, yep.
They're big.
They're big, so they've grown rapidly in a short space of time.
They're going to acquire businesses.
They do acquire businesses.
Have they got no assets?
That's more the telling factor. So Facebook and YouTube don't own anything, do they? Yeah? They do have assets, they own intellectual property. But you're quite right. So basically they're virtual businesses. Yeah? So if you think about it, YouTube is the second biggest search engine on the planet, and it's owned by the first biggest, which is the great god Google. So Google are the biggest, they own the second biggest, there are more searches on YouTube for how to do something than any other search engine. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
How to change a light bulb, how to clean tights in an emergency, you name it, there's a video on there for that. So YouTube's quite remarkable, but all of the content on YouTube is supplied by the people that go on YouTube, yeah? They don't produce anything themselves. The entire inventory is their members, yeah? Facebook, same thing, yeah? Everything on there is produced by the people who use the platform. Yeah, it's genius, isn't it, when you think about it? You don't have to think about, what am I selling today? Where's my inventory? Where's my stock? Yeah, there's no stock, there's no inventory, you don't have to think about it, you just have to provide a place where people meet and share stuff, yeah? Funding circle, same thing, yeah? So people often think of funding circle as a place to go and get cash, which it is, but they've replaced the traditional bank in many respects. So people put money into funding circle and people take money out, and they just provide a route to market, don't they? Yeah, but they're not a bank, yeah? They're not like a bank with liquidity tests and all the stuff that Europe's chucking around about, you know, how stable are they, etc. Doesn't really come into the picture at all, does it? I chucked Aldermore up for a different reason. Anyone know why? Something unusual about Aldermore, aside from the fact that they've grown rapidly? Anyone know something interesting about Aldermore in terms of intellectual property? Anyone hazard a guess? Okay, so here's the interesting thing. So getting a banking license in the UK is nigh on impossible. Anyone seen the program Bank of Dave?
Yeah.
Yeah? Anyone watched that and saw the traumas that he went through trying to get a banking license? Yeah, to do basically good things. Yeah, help society and help community. Forget it. These guys, they had a banking license, but they were a sleepy little private bank somewhere in Cambridgeshire. And some people in the city went, hang on a minute, they've got a banking license. So they, a bit like Martin Sorrell did, they acquired a controlling interest and then whoomp, off took Aldermore. So it's often the intellectual property in a business that's as much of the value in a business as something tangible, yeah? So what we're going to talk about tonight is the intangible, sometimes the hidden benefits of what you find in a business, particularly in a balance sheet. Anybody really love reading accounts? Anybody? Yeah? Really fascinating, yeah? Like, you know, page after page, fascinating balance sheets, yeah? But who's an accountant? Yeah. You're not allowed to talk about that. Anyone else who's not an accountant really like reading accounts?
No.
Yeah? Okay, so I'm not an accountant, I don't have a business degree, but I can read a set of accounts and I can tell you what's happening in the business from reading a set of accounts, particularly over 3 or 4 years. I can pick out the trends and I can understand what's going on in that business. And actually, it's something that we teach anyway, but once you master that art, it completely changes your view of how a business operates. Is that a fair comment, Tom?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so what we've done is taken what I've done and turned it into a blueprint. So we call it the business buying blueprint. If you want to take, are you handing out slides or?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You're welcome to have a copy of the slides, or if you want to take photos, whatever works for you. So, but going back to where I started, there are 2 steps in this, 1 and 7, which I didn't get when I started the process, okay? So I didn't understand why, and I definitely didn't spot the point about turning it into gold, okay? So I'm gonna talk about those before we finish. Has anyone heard of or seen Simon Sinek?
Yeah.
Yeah? Start with your why? Yeah?
Yeah.
So I completely missed that. And the reason was simple, that I came out of the circumstance I had, a broken back, a massive fallout with my business partner. It was like, I was just tunnel vision. I'd figured out how to buy companies, or I reckoned I'd figured it out. And all I wanted to do was to go and improve the route, okay? So the point was that it was more about the process. I'd figured out a process. Who has ever bought a property and thought, I wish I hadn't bought that property? Anyone in the room? Yeah? Okay. And why did it happen? Was it because you could?
I just discovered it was sort of not the best area. I wish I'd done more research behind it first before I bought it.
Okay. Anyone else with a similar experience? Bought a property that, yeah?
Rush of blood to the head.
Rush of blood to the head, yeah? Because you could. Yeah? I can buy this property, yeah? Was it with no money down?
Yeah, ultimately.
Ultimately, no money down, yeah? So,
Yep.
oh, look at me. I bought that property, no money down. Aren't I clever?
Feeding
Yeah.
frenzy.
Well, we've all done it, okay? Or if we haven't, chances are you will at some stage. So, and that's this business. So I was like, right, okay, I know what market I want to go for. I know where I can find the targets. I figured out the process. So I was very much in that kind of zone of, look at this is really clever. But I completely missed 1 and 7, and I'm going to come back to those before we finish. So the number one feature in buying any business where you're not using your own capital is motivation. Your own motivation, which is part of the why, but actually the motivation of the vendor is the critical factor. And pretty much, if you understand the motivation and you get under the skin of the motivation, any deal will go through, essentially, if it's the right motivated vendor. Again, in property, motivated vendors,
Absolutely.
yeah, essential part of the process, yeah. And it's exactly the same with business. There are lots of parallels. In fact, true story. Anyone know Simon Zucci? Been, yeah. I'm going skiing with Simon on Thursday, but I did Simon's mastermind, and while I was on it, I bought the first 2 companies and so on, and a few people said to me, why are you doing property when you can buy companies? And I was like, no, it's, another pillar of wealth, it's interesting. And then I read Simon's book, Property Magic. Anyone else read that? Yeah. So I said to Simon, look, Simon, is it all right if I borrow the chassis of your book, the chapters and the format? Because I think I could use something like that and write my own book. So he said, yeah, that's fine, no problem. So I wrote the book, and then I sent him a copy saying, is that okay, because I published it. And he went, it really is like my book. And I went, well, you said I could. So we always have a giggle about that. But motivation is critical in dealing with the opportunities that come your way. So I just want you to take a step back, as it were, and just have a think for a couple of minutes. Now, hopefully, this is something that you've already done. And maybe you've got this on the wall, in front of your desk. If you haven't, you should have. Yeah, and just have a think about what would your perfect day look like. So, show of hands. Who wakes up to an alarm clock? Okay. Who wishes they didn't wake up to an alarm clock? Yeah? So, for those of us that wake up to an alarm clock, how nice would it be if you didn't have to? If you just woke up when you woke up? Would that be good? Yeah? Would that be nice? Yeah? And then, for those of us that don't wake up to an alarm clock, who doesn't have stuff already in the diary for that day? Stuff that they've got to do. Who doesn't? Anyone?
Depends on the day.
Okay. But at least several days of the week?
At least
3 or 4 days of the week, yeah? There's stuff that you have to do, you have to attend to, yeah?
I want to attend to.
Yeah. So anyone heard or seen Brad Sugars?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you've been to one of his talks, he does the thing, doesn't he, where gets everyone standing up and then stay standing if, yeah? And at the end of it, there's like 2 or 3 people, yeah? So his definition of a business is a commercial profitable enterprise that works without you.
Yeah.
Yeah? But the truth is, I'm sure everybody in a room is working towards that goal. Would you agree? Yes? Yes or no?
Yes.
Everyone's working. That's why we're here, yeah? But how many times do we take the time to stop and ask ourselves that question? Yeah? What does the perfect day look like? What would it look like? Yeah? So I want you to just do a little exercise. Bear with me, okay? Close your eyes. Just close your eyes. Trust me, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to come anywhere near you. Just close your eyes and visualise a perfect day where there's no alarm clock. Anywhere you choose to be that would be your perfect place. And then what you might do on that perfect day. And if that perfect day turned into that perfect week. And if that perfect week turned into that perfect month. Who would you be with? And now, how big would your smile be? Doing the things that you'd love to do. And now everyone can open their eyes because everyone's got a big smile on their face. Yeah? So we can all do this. We can do that visualization exercise, but if we don't do it, we lose sight of the reason why we're doing what we do. Yeah, because we get caught up in the hurly-burly, don't we? Another email, another phone call, another meeting, another person to speak to, another hustle, as Gary Vee would talk about. Yeah? I do it. I know I do. Okay? But the process that we go through right at the beginning is to take people through this kind of exercise so you get absolute crystal clear clarity as to what it is and why you're doing what you do. So do you know what your dream lifestyle might cost? Again, hopefully, if you haven't got an absolute clear idea, you've got a pretty good idea. Is that fair? Yeah, doing what you do? Okay. But sometimes we don't think about how long that might take, or if we do, we have a vague idea about how long that might take. We always say, I've done it, when I get there, when I get to this, when I've done that. Yeah? And all the time is ticking by. What's the one resource we can't get back? Time. Yeah? We can make money. We can find people, we can find business partners, we can't get time back. Yeah? 28,732, anyone know what that is?
Seconds in a day.
No. It's the average number of days that men are alive in the UK. 28,732. Yeah? Now work out how many days you got left. Seriously? Yeah. Subtract one from the other. Okay? We don't do that, do we? We get caught up in the hurly-burly. Yeah? Now, what if you could have monthly cash flow without trying? Who would like that? Monthly cash flow. And I mean proper monthly cash flow. I don't mean passive income from property, because there's no such thing, is there? Yeah? Properties don't find tenants by themselves. They don't fix the roof by themselves. They don't deal with the utility companies by themselves. Yeah, there has to be a process. Would you agree? Yes or no? Yeah. Okay, so it's not really passive. And I know lots of the gurus sell passive income, but it's not really passive. Owning a business isn't passive income. You've still got to have a board meeting, you've still got to check it over, you've still got to look at your dashboard. The process that we talk about is the process of finding a business, acquiring it, growing it, and flogging it, and the money goes into a wealth pot, and then that wealth pot generates cash for you for life and grows every year, whether you do anything or not. That's the process to create true financial freedom. Anyone want to find out how we do that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Why might you bother? I think it's one of the most leveraged ways to increase your wealth. When you think about a business versus what cash a property might kick out. I'm not saying there aren't big property deals, but for most of us in the room, I'm talking about what's realistic now, as opposed to a lifetime of grafting away until you get to the bigger deals. This is stuff that you could start to do tomorrow. So income and growth, acceleration in terms of wealth building. It's also very tax efficient. I'll share a little secret before the end about tax efficiency and business structures. But most of all, it's that word freedom, options and freedom. That's what we're really focused on, the reason why we want to be doing this. And the bit that I completely missed when I started. So I'm here standing guilty as charged. So, the hard way, let's just have a quick look at that. Oops. So, 2 example businesses, okay, startup companies. And remember, I've been there, done this, so I know what it looks like. So let's imagine year 1, first company, 100k. Year 1 for the second company, 250. Yeah? Not unreasonable for a startup business. Some businesses never go over 50,000, 60,000. I don't know what sort of size of client you have, but
It's 150 million, 7 million.
okay, fantastic. But you know what I'm talking about when it comes to the smaller businesses, yeah? Yeah, okay. So, now in year 2, a lot of businesses can grow quite quickly. So, the first company could be up to 200 if it's done 100% growth, and the second one 500,000. Now, here's an interesting stat for you. 84% of all UK businesses never turn over more than £500,000. Okay? So we're talking about 16% that get over the 500,000. 1 in 2 UK businesses, startups, fail in the first 5 years. That's a hell of an attrition rate. Okay? So if you take nothing else away from tonight, think of this. If you buy a business that's been trading for more than 5 years, ideally 10, 15, 20 years, and it does more than 500,000, you've beaten the odds in one go. Why would you want to go through the pain of that when you can beat those odds by acquisition? Make sense?
Yep.
Now, let's imagine in year 3 that the growth has slowed down, which is natural. Okay, businesses start to plateau, start to reach a natural level. So we might now be at 240, 600. And let's assume as well that the businesses have actually made a profit in those first 3 years, and lots of startup businesses don't make a profit. But that's what the sort of headline profits would look like. Yeah? No wonder our friend here has got his head in his hands. Yeah? Think of all the hard work, sweat, toil, missed family events, missed holidays, and all the other stuff that goes into a starter could be represented by those 3 years. Anyone know what I'm talking about? Anyone started a business? Come on, I know you do. Yeah, it's a room of honesty. You're amongst friends, you can be honest, it's not a problem. So, I think there's a smarter, easy way of doing this. So, if you could do in 6 months what I did in 6 years, remember it took me 6 years to get to 1.5 million. Anyone interested in how we did that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first deal, January 06, was an acquisition doing 700,000. Now remember what I said before about the stat, we'd already beaten the odds with that first deal, 700k turnover. Most businesses never get past 500,000. Okay, and then the second deal came in 6 months after that, which was a £2 million business. So we'd gone in 6 months, all right, add the 2 months prior to that when we were doing the deal, from 0 to 2.7 million turnover. And we'd acquired a property, a head office that came with that business. Now, as an interesting aside to this, going back to what I was talking about before, motivation, okay? The second business, I remember sat in the office talking to a guy, going through the figures and looking at the accounts. And on the accounts was a tangible asset valued at, I can't remember off the top of my head, 200, 250, something like that. So I said to him, because we're sat in a rented office, pretty shabby place, paper all over the place. It was an electrical contractor. And I said, Pete, what's the asset? And he went, oh yeah, that's the house. And I'm like, what house? Thinking it was maybe a house that he lived in. He said, no. He said, we bought. He said that's the school. I said, the school? What school? So he said, well, we bought a school. The school is shut down, and we bought a building. Oh right, okay. What's the idea? Well, we were going to move the company in there, but we never got around to it. Hang on a minute. So you're operating out of a shabby rented office. You've got a building that you bought. You bought it at auction. Yeah, bought it at auction. Paid cash for it. Okay. Interesting. So said, let's go there. So we got in the car, went up there. Guess what I found? I found a big Victorian house, hence I started talking about house, and behind it was a more modern development. So the whole complex was capable of housing probably 6 small businesses. So the rent that we could have got from 6 small businesses, plus the business being in there that was already paying rent somewhere else, but he hadn't got round to finishing the place. Does that make any kind of business sense to you guys?
Not at all.
Makes no sense at all, does it? But it's the reality of where lots of businesses sit, because they're under pressure. They've never got the time. They're always running around trying to make ends meet. You know, his biggest problem was cash collection. Yeah, he never collected cash in, so we had a massive debtor book. So I said to him, why don't you get paid? Oh, I get round to it. If I need some money, I just ring the clients and they send me some. I was like, right, okay. And then he was wondering why he was running out of money. You know, struggling to make the wages. So like, so many simple solutions, yet that is where people often sit. So sometimes people say to me, well, how can you buy these businesses? I say, because they reach a level where their heads are just under the water. There's nothing intrinsically wrong, but they reach a level of competence. Not incompetence, a level of competence beyond which they can't move. Does that make sense? You come across that as an accountant? Yeah? They don't know what they don't know. They don't know how to fix those kind of problems. And sometimes the best solution is then just to exit, is to sell the business. More often than not, they want to stay in the business, which is great for us because then we've got continuity. So, these are kind of 3 key secrets for you, again, to think about taking away. So, in 6 months, I created more sales revenue than I'd managed to achieve in 6 years of hard graft. Now, for sometimes you don't need any money to acquire a good, profitable business. But most importantly, if you know where to look in the accounts, you can double the value of the business on exit. And that's where point 7, where the gold comes into it. Okay? So those are the 3 secrets to this whole process that's really important to take on board. So, just a couple of case studies from the Business Buyers Club. These are real people. Matt is a was a painter and decorator when he started work. His dad runs a painting and decorating company, bless him, still does today. He owns a job. Matt went to work with his dad, got fed up splashing paint on the walls and thought there's got to be a better way of doing this. Started acquiring properties, refurbing them, so it's very much from the property world. All you guys here will recognise that. Then he got fed up with the letting agents that He let the properties through, thought I can do a better job, so he started his own letting agency, did really well with that, and thought I need to diversify away from property. Property's great, and he still does that today, but I need another pillar of wealth. And I came across what I was doing and thought, okay, I want to buy companies. So he's currently finalising heads of terms to acquire a £1.5 million building services business. He did have a deal, the previous slide when I showed this, he had a £6 million deal, but it slipped away due to a dodgy vendor advisor. So he's close to completing that. He's got another deal cooking at the moment, so I'll find out today. Sue, different spectrum. She runs an FCA regulated finance business, although she helps find funding for property developers, so it's sort of property related. And her husband looks after the portfolio of the properties that they've got. She also joined in January, and she's in legals now to complete the acquisition of a £3 million business that has a 34% net profit margin, so stupidly profitable. And she's doing that without any of her own cash. So both of those deals are without their own cash. So these are real people doing real deals. So the next question in the process is the market. What sector suit you best? So I'm just going to rattle through these. So there's kind of 7 rules for investing. Essentially, you want growth markets, you want businesses that operate where there's lots of those kind of businesses out there. So you've got plenty of choice, plenty of scope. You want to buy established products and services. You know, companies that manufacture bog rolls are never going to go out of business because everyone uses bog rolls, regardless of whether there's a recession or not. You also want to build a team. Our speaker before was talking about Wealth Dynamics. We use Wealth Dynamics for all of our people in the club, so they understand how to build a complementary team. Love Wealth Dynamics, brilliant. I'm a creator, never guess, would you? And also, you know, focusing on the deal, not the emotion. So that's very important. The deal of the century comes along every week, so it's all about deal flow as well, opportunities. Finding ideal targets. Essentially, there are 4 keys to this. So, like I mentioned before, what I call fragmented owner-managed businesses. Good example is electrical contractors, plumbers. There's flipping rooks of them all over the place. Some are good, some are less good. Some are one-man bands, some are fairly sizable companies. So there's plenty of scope, and they're all at different stages of their growth and their life cycle. So some at some stage will be available, and there are lots of other companies like that. Ideally business to business, just because it's a lot easier to get the funding in place to acquire without any of your own cash. You can buy B2C companies using this methodology, but the funding can be more of a challenge. And unless you're going to find really motivated vendors, you may need to put some kind of security into the deal, which is not ideal, so I don't like doing that. I don't like being hooked to a bank, so we do it preferably B2B. And 2 things really, something that you know and you like, or you've got some expertise in, and something that ideally is growing. So not much point buying in, you know, coal and steel, for example. And in terms of finding them, how long have we got, Van? About 10 minutes?
Yeah.
10 minutes. Okay. I'm just going to tell a quick story. So I need a participation from the member of the audience. Who's got a business here that's been in business for a while? Anyone? 5 years, 3 years? Okay. Have you ever had a contact from a broker, business broker, saying, would you like to sell your company? Yeah? Yes. Did you ever speak to any of them?
I did, yes.
You did? Okay. And can I hazard a guess that they... What's
Lessons agency.
What's your first name?
Chris.
Chris. So Chris, did the business broker say, I can sell your business for millions of pounds, Chris?
It was a high valuation.
It was a high valuation, yeah, okay, yeah. So a bit like estate agents, yeah. 3 estate agents, and you get the highest valuation, and it says a spread of £50,000, and you go, I'll go for the high one, because guess what? If he flogs it, then I'm quid in. You're never going to go for the bottom price, are you? So what happens with business brokers? Chris is at the phone call from the broker. Hi, Chris. I can tell you, I've got. Did he mention he's got loads and loads of buyers?
Yeah,
eager and anxious to buy your company.
Desperate, yeah.
Desperate. There you go. You see, desperate. I could have written the script for him. Yeah. So what happens is Chris then goes, "What's his tempting? What's you married?
Yes.
Yeah. Your wife? It's called
Emma.
Emma. So Chris goes down to Emma and says, "Hey Emma, guess what? I had a phone call from a bloke called a business broker today, and he's told me my business is worth £5 million. Can you believe it? And Emma's like, fantastic, that's it, we cracked it. It's like winning the lottery. So, and he'll come back and he'll see you and he'll turn up in a nice suit and he'll go, just sign here, and it's just a small deposit to get you onto our books to all these eager buyers. And there's a company called BCMS. I'm quite happy to talk about it because it's true. They're out on the marketplace. They're the biggest broker probably in the UK. Last year turned over about 13 million in fees, based down in Reading Way. And they charge an average of £45,000 for a business to go on their books, to get teamed up with their network of eager buyers. Okay. Now this is not about BCMS, but there are a lot of other brokers who don't have the same approach that BCMS do. Shall we say somewhat less professional. Basically, charge the fee, get you on the books, and forget. Okay. And if they sell the business, actually Chris will sell the business. It won't be them because they don't even turn up to the meetings. But if Chris sells the business, they go, oh, by the way, the contingent fee, you need to pay me another 70,000. So he's paid him 10 grand to get on the books. And 2 years later, he sat there saying to him, I'm really sorry, love, I thought there'd be a stream of ready, happy buyers coming to buy my company. And what's happened is that he's got on their books because they've convinced him of a higher price. Now, do you know how to value a company?
I know how to value one in my sector.
Yeah, but any company.
No.
No, there isn't a formula. Yeah. So unlike property, where a valuer goes out, a professionally trained valuer goes out, looks at the bricks and mortar and goes, here's my valuation. Yeah. So in property, it's actually easier because an independent party says, here you go, this is what the property's worth. Would you agree? Yes or no? Yeah. But in valuing a business, how many different variables are there as an accountant, Tom? Many. Yeah, 10, 15, 20. There's so many different variables. So there is no proven formula. Okay. Ultimately, it's what someone's willing to pay for it. But the problem you have as a buyer is you've got to get past this business broker problem. Yeah. So the expectation on the part of the vendor is right up there. So we come along with our valuation tools, which by the way are really easy to use, and we go, well, actually, Chris, it's worth £1 million. And you go, oh, shit. How do I go home and tell Emma that? The broker told me 5 million, and this bloke's telling me £1 million. He must be trying to have me over. Yeah? So it's how you manage the expectation, which is why they have to be a motivated vendor. Then you build a rapport, and then you help to get them to understand where the value sits in the business. Okay? Fair enough? Make sense? Networking, tell everyone. People say to me, what do you do? It's always a question, isn't it? At parties, what do you do? I buy companies. No, sorry, what do you do? I buy companies, or I teach people how to buy companies. It's a bit of a showstopper, so it's an interesting conversation piece. Direct mail, website and advertising. We do a stack of this now because direct mail doesn't exist anymore. I used to do millions and millions of junk mail. There's no such thing as junk mail, it's just poorly addressed and targeted, but don't get me going on that. So we have an effective database system. We control every company in the UK, from FTSE 100 to sole traders, with all the credit ratings, all the information on the company. We can do really sharply defined targeting and write to those companies with a fairly proven, tested sequence of letters, because we're not business brokers. And that works pretty well as well. But we also have relationships with some of the broker sites that help us to find deals as well, sometimes off market as well, hence the outsourcing bit. So the art of win-win deals. I talked before about motivated vendors. This is just a little chart to show you what can happen. So if you've got a business valued at 1.2 million, and let's say that's a business doing typically, I don't know, probably 4 million revenue, okay? Without going into too much detail, generally around that sort of figure. So 1.2 million, the owner will probably be taking that kind of income out of it. So they'll be using the tax allowances aggressively, 11k, and then the rest will be taken as a dividend. So annual income 75, somewhere between 75 and 100k. That's pretty common. Okay, 75k is 3 times the annual salary average for the UK. Okay, so most people with a net income of 75 grand pretty happy. Yeah, it's a lifestyle business. It's paid the house, it's paid for holidays, paid for the kids, etc. So over 3 years, 225, maybe 300k. Okay, everyone happy with that so far?
Yep.
So they're thinking, hang on a minute, guy wants to buy this company off me, but if I keep it, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm doing all right. So what we want to do is show them the alternative, okay? Because our deals are so much on the day, the rest deferred. So what we're going to say to them is, well, look, I really like you, Tom, and you're a key part of the business, and I know you don't really want to leave. You're just fed up to here with all of the admin and the bureaucracy and the HR and the compliance and the tax and all the other stuff, yeah? Anyone ever come across any of that in the business? But how would you like to do? So I had a conversation with a guy who was trying to buy us. So what would your perfect day look like, you know, work-wise? And he said, well, I'll take the clients to West Ham. I mean, who goes to West Ham? I'll take the clients to West Ham on a regular basis and, you know, maybe go on the golf course. I said, well, okay, we'll make that so then. Would that be good? Well, can I do that? Yeah, why not? If that makes you happy and you're performing to the best advantage of the business, it's a no-brainer. So the business is already paying him a certain level of income. So now we're going to pay him a consultancy fee, so he qualifies for tax relief, but he's still getting a nice income out of the business, and he's doing the stuff that he wanted to do when he first started a business. How good is that? The next, so that's going to pull him in another 200 odd K over 3 years. However, if he sells the business after his tax relief and fees, yeah, in total, he's going to pull in 1.29 million, as opposed to 225. So if you don't present that properly, then you're going to have a problem. But if you present it properly to the right kind of motivated vendor, 9 times out of 10 that will get them over the line. So in simple terms, value in a business is, like I said, it's what someone's willing to pay for it. But what I look at is the return on time. How long is it going to take to get the cash back out of the deal, or the money paid to the vendor? How quickly can I do that? Because once that's done, the business is all mine. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, simple guide to valuations. I'm just going to flash these up because time's tight. So basically, these figures here, these are, if you like, corporate finance accepted numbers. So if a business is doing in the bracket of 0 to 10%, it's going to be 2.5, 3 times a multiple. So if that 10% is 100 grand, it's going to be worth 300 grand. Does that make sense? Something like that. If it's doing between 10 and 20%, then the multiple goes up to 4 or 5. And if it's 20% or more. Now most of the businesses that I ever look at do an average of 12% net profit. Is that fair, Tom?
Yeah.
On average. Yeah, there are plenty that do more and there are plenty that do less. But the average is around about 12%. So most of the time you can do a fairly quick multiple just looking at the profit and go, okay, 2.5, 3 times as a start point. Okay, then we look at other factors. What we also use is what's called a price earnings ratio. I haven't got time to go into that today, but we have a spreadsheet which in about 10 seconds, literally 10 seconds, will give you a valuation based on price earnings. So a really simple tool, and we give that to a vendor to go, there you go, that's your valuation. So, quick run through the key criteria for deal structures. So you need creditworthy customers. Okay, you need a target company where the customers are insurable effectively, so blue chip ideally. You want a strong debtor book, in other words, a profitable company where it's giving credit terms will generally have more money owed to it than it owes out. Okay, so that's where cash is tied up in a debtor book, and we can release that. You need good recurring sales stream. You want growth. You want to understand where the profit margins sit in the business, but also you want fairly well-established processes, but not so good that you can't improve on them. Does that make sense? Okay, so those are the kind of the key criteria for deals. So I mentioned before the 3 tools that we provide are the P ratio evaluations, the deal analysis tool to show you where the cash is in the business, and then we have a 3-year cash flow and profit model. So once you plug the numbers in, that shows you where you get the cash out of the business. So essentially, to buy a company without using any of your own cash, you leverage the debtor book, you use the cash that's sat on the balance sheet, and you defer a portion. So the business generates the profit to pay the vendor for that business, and then you don't need any cash of your own. That makes sense? That's it? Easy. Really easy. We run a workshop, but I've got a special offer for tonight. But have I got time just to, have we got a flip chart? It's a bit hidden away there.
Over there.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay. Is anyone interested in a live example before I finish
Definitely.
of that leveraging?
Yeah.
Would that be good?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, it's not on the slide, but this is a real case study. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I'll just shift this to one side without wrecking it. Merry Christmas. Oh, there's lots of writing on here. back now, I promise.
No, no problem.
Okay, so very quickly, this is a live example. So business that one of our members was looking at, and I do a lot of the coaching for everyone anyway, so make sure that they understand what they're doing, what they're looking at, etc. So the business was, when we first came across it, was doing 4 million in sales and was generating an 18% gross profit, which is pretty low, and worst of all, was doing a 3% net profit. Okay? So at first glance, not really worth bothering with. At 3%, it only needs to lose a couple of customers and it's wiped out. Yeah. But so my reaction to Paul was, "It's a dog, don't bother." "Oh, well, I've been to see them and I like them, and oh, okay, all right. Well, tell me a bit more." So he sent me over the copy of the accounts and what was lurking in the accounts. Anyone? I know you don't like reading accounts, but honestly, they're quite interesting once you get into them. The last page on a full set of accounts is called a detailed P&L. Anyone know what I'm on about? Yeah. That's where you get the detail of what the company spends money on, essentially. Okay. So in the detailed P&L, they had pensions. There were 6 people in the company. Wages 132k, extra on top of the actual people doing the work. Cars, rent, the rates bill for 6 people, 32k. Rent was 85k because they own the building. Cars was something like 30k. Range Rovers. Who doesn't need a Range Rover? So when we looked at that, we went, hang on a minute. All of this would get added back once we bought the company. Okay, which meant that then went to 11%. Okay, now it's generating cash. So there's a lot of hidden cash in the detailed P&L. Also, what Paul said is, well, I know I can drive that to 21%. Okay, so now it's generating more cash. So for the same overhead, yeah, but with all the crap wiped out of it, and increasing the margin by just 3%. Okay, so what have we done here? We've got 6% extra over here, yeah, and we've got another 3% here. Okay, and the effect on the gross profit to net profit is actually greater. Yeah, so now what we valued the business at was £500,000. It was a shade under £500,000. Okay? Anyone hazard a guess what the vendors wanted for the company? What their ideal figure was?
4 million.
No, not quite that bad. Okay, 1.5 million. Okay, was the asking price. Now, after we'd done all of that, it was genuinely worth £500,000. Okay, would you agree? Most people would go, okay, call it a day at that point. Yeah, yes or no? Yeah. Okay. So going back to what I described before, the model. Get that back. The 3-year cash flow model. Okay. What we did was run the numbers, this effect, into the model to see what impact there was on the cash flow. Okay. And what it meant was that over 3 years we could pay them £1.5 million, but Paul would also drag out of it in year 1 130k for himself for his holding company. Okay, so he could afford to pay them £1.5 million over 3 years on an earn-out, which means the figures are pegged to the performance of the business, and he could pay himself 130k out of the business comfortably and still leave it profitable. So by understanding the figures and understanding where to look in what's happening in the business and understand the drivers of profit and performance, and Brad Sugars talks about the 5s, yeah? The 5 ways and the 5%, the same sort of thing going on here, okay? Then that was the impact on that business. What do you think the answer was? So we offered £1.5 million for the business. We offered the full asking price, 3 times the value of the business. What do you think they said? No. Because they wanted £1 million cash on the day. And we just said, no, you're taking the piss. So that was that. But anybody else, I actually think that they were just going to find an idiot to sell it to. Give them £1 million and then they'd be off. Yeah.
And did they sell it to somebody at that price?
No. No one's good. That's the best deal in town.
No, quite.
No one else was going to buy that off them.
So did you go back to them?
Yeah, we went back, said, what are you doing? Oh, we'll just keep taking the cash out. Really? And pay 40% tax? Well, if that's what they want to do. Now it's as clear as folk. So there you go, that's a live example. So on the workshop, we go into a lot more detail about that. Okay, we go through the mindset, we go through how understanding motivation, understanding how the rapport process works with a potential vendor, etc. And then the second half we get into the detail of the figures, how you knit the numbers together and how you produce a deal. And as I said, the negotiating techniques, working out the exact price, etc. So it's not a sales fest. That's not what it's for. I'm genuinely happy to give away that information. And then if you go off and buy companies, fantastic. That is my mission. My purpose is to help business owners both sell businesses and buy businesses, because the whole thing needs demystifying and de-bullshitting, because there is a huge amount of bullshit goes on in buying and selling companies. And so tonight, the next event is the 10th of January in London or the 1st of February. I'm guessing because it's Leeds, most of people will be interested in Manchester, but I've only got 10 places. So tonight, as a special offer, we're doing it as free. It's not normally 297 quid, but it is free. If anybody here tonight wants to come, the team at the back have got some forms. Is anyone interested in coming to learn more? Yeah? Fantastic. So, Mo, start the process, they come and see you?
Yeah, just come out the back.
Okay, cool.
To the front.
Just to be clear then, who this is for, okay? Because it's not for everybody, alright? It's not a problem, I don't mind.